Skaven. Part 1 Propaganda. Red eyes and yellow fangs glint in the darkness. Always by surprise and always with overwhelming numbers, the endless swarms of the Skaven clans seek to drown their enemies in a sea of blades, tails, and teeth. But while they are undoubtedly the most populous race in the mortal realms, their victories solely from sheer numbers are the free wins and incidental triumphs of a greater and more Byzantine strategy, whose complexity often borders on the absurd. Their conniving plots are further confounded by their society structure. Large cells of anarchic hierarchies of perpetual backstabbing and assassinations, often so common as to happen several times on the same mission, which constantly alters course as to what methods to use or even what the goal still is now. Half in service to and half in fear of the fifth chaos god, the paranoidal triskaidekitude that is the Great Horned Rat. They chew through realm space with gnaw holes, a labyrinthian webwork of unknowable tunnels and routes through reality that either erupts into the throne room of the enemy kingdom or drops them screaming from a warp gate in the sky to the para-elemental plane of liquid chlorine magma or something and die instantly. It's sad, but plenty more rats where that came from. On to the great clans. Scryer are the mad scientists that are almost as addicted to warpstone as they are to overclocking already turbocharged war machines until they kill at least as many allies as enemies. But really, with Skaven, are there ever truly allies? Those rats were probably listed in the manifest under ammunition. Pestilence are walking chemical weapon clouds with gas-spewing sensors and priests atop giant plague furnaces. Their legions of bubonic monks seek to collect all 13 great plagues and spread them across the mortal realms. Verminous are the most militaristic clan, focused on combat prowess, battlefield tactics, and superior weapons and armor. Molder is the horrifying Frankenrat mutation clan. Sadly, it's underdeveloped rules-wise, but their monsters are scary. Eshin are ninja rats, and that's sweet, but also that's it. Here's hoping they get a proper release someday. The Grey Seers of Master Clan are the smallest and least powerful, just kidding, most powerful clan, by secretly controlling all the other ones with cunning plans, worm-tongue advisors, and a staggering number of double agents. Amongst Chaos Gods, it was the Great Horned Rat who first seeped his minions into the mortal realms, well ahead of the sluggish older four at the very dawn of the Age of Myth. Later, it was Skaven warp spies who discovered Sigmar's impending counterattack with the then-secret Stormcast Eternals that even Tzeentch missed, which would usher in the Age of Sigmar. Naturally, they capitalized on this foreknowledge by not telling anyone else about it and laughing maniacally as untold millions of other Chaos armies and worshippers died. Hey, shoulda worshipped the rat. And most recently, it was Clan Eshin that foiled Nagash's malign sorcery of the Black Pyramid at the very last moment. Reports differ as to whether or not this was pure luck, but Nagash stay mad anyway. Part 2 Models. Skaven is another horde army, but not as extreme as Gloomspite Geats. Unless you want it to be, you have that option. Here it's probably 60 minimum instead of 120. The secret and underappreciated foundation of Skaven army's success is the humble clan rat. 20 for 120 and 40 for 200. 6-inch move, 5-up armor, pretty weak attacks on 4s and 4s no rend with swords, though 3s and 3s after massive regiment bonuses. +2 to runs, can always retreat and charge for that much needed large unit repositioning. Skaven also has a huge amount of synergies and buffs to absorb. Don't let their 4 bravery fool you, Skaven armies are nearly as immune to battle shock as Oziarch Bone Reapers on the table. You also have 3 gnaw holes to set up before the game begins near table edges that you can teleport between as long as no enemies are nearby. A note on construction, the little scaffolding is annoying to put together, but it won't change the footprint too much if you go without. On conversions, stuff coming out of portals is always fun. Skaven has so many models and kits that it could almost be a small Grand Alliance, so I'm going to be a little more brief here than in other videos. The top leadership are the gorgeous and powerful Vermin Lords. They're all 12 wound, 4-up save double casters with 5-up shrugs and well costed at around 300 points. Noteworthy ones are the Deceiver, who has a hero-only teleport and decent attacks. Corruptor, who has a good 4-up per model Hordebreaker spell and a strong AoE command ability that lets Pestilence reroll hits. Warbringer, who I think is underrated. His spell lets D3 friendly Skaven units within 13 pile in an attack before they die. And Warpseer, which is probably the strongest one, rerolls all saves. His dreaded Warp Gale spell is super strong, being a 26-inch range D6 mortal wounds that halves runs and charges and removes flying. and his command ability makes friendly Skaven immune to battle shock in a 52-inch diameter. And he gives you a command point in each of your hero phases on a 3-up, or D3 on a 6-up. These guys look great. They're basically the transcendental ideal of what normal Skaven wish they looked like. Plus, they're great on the table, but not totally required. It's rare but not unheard of for a Skaven army not to include one of these, but I think it's like 50% how good they are and 50% how awesome they look. What I think probably is an auto-include would be a Grey Seer keyword of any sort, since the Grey Seer only spell lore is amazing. Either the cheap one on foot that casts 2 spells a turn, one of which you roll 3d6 drop the lowest for, or the AoE Battle Shock Immunity Aura version on the Screaming Bell, which still has 2 spells per turn but no supercasting, and a once per turn Ring of the Bell for, to be honest, mostly whatever effects, but hey, just roll boxcars and summon a free Vermin Lord. Stocks. Thankful on Bone Ripper is a horrifying monster ridden by the Master of Master Clan. He's very expensive at 400 points, but just blasts damage and mortal wounds out of every orifice. You can customize his weapon loadout in fun ways. He's got a 5-up shrug, casts 2 spells a turn, and an okay command ability. Also importantly, he's got the Grey Seer keyword, so he gets the good spell lores. For Scryer, the Arc Warlock is a strong doublecaster hero with Warpstone power armor, a fun Lightning Storm spell, and access to the Scryer lore, which has more warp power, one of the best buffs in the game, which lets you reroll all hits and all wounds in melee and ranged. Casts on a 7, and the only downside is a D3 mortal wounds at the end of your next hero phase. You also have Warlock Engineers, who can all cast D6 mortal wounds spell with the normal once a turn limit removed if you use multiples, and they supercharge your Warp Lightning Cannons, as do the slightly more expensive Bombardiers, who are definitely worse because they cost 20 points more, but they look cooler, so really, you know. What those engineers are buffing is the mighty Warp Lightning Cannon, a 24-inch range artillery piece that you can overcharge, of course. First you roll a die, and the result becomes the target number. Then you roll 12 dice, and it does 1 mortal wound for each result equal to or above the target number. And yes, that means if you roll a 1 for the target number, you just do 12 mortal wounds, because you're only ever going to get equal to or above 1. Not bad. Of course, sometimes it explodes, but pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. In Skaven, you really are spoiled for choice when it comes to quality range damage, and can pick whatever end result you feel is better or you like more. For pure mortal wounds, it's Warp Lightning Cannons for the longest range with high rend, and a few mortal wounds on 6s to hit, there's Warp Lock Jezzail Snipers, and for short range, highest throughput pure damage, you have Scryer Acolytes. Although running clouds of 20 or so will require lots of conversions, or for you to have completed the American dream of being born into wealth and then ran a company or 2 into the ground and escaped with your CEO golden parachutes, because they are $15 for 1 model. So when you're done buying 40 for your awesome Scryer army, you might consider checking out my Patreon page. Most people think that Plague Claw catapults are bad, and they are right. They only have 1 attack for 180 points with worse than a coin flip chance to hit even before the armor save, and they get a bonus versus hordes, which isn't really a job you're trying to fill. You'll do fine against hordes already. They do ignore line of sight, so if you want to pay 360 points for a very low chance at sniping a small hero hiding in cover, I mean go ahead, but it's not very worth. For Verminus, the Claw Lord has an excellent +1 attacks with all melee weapons command ability, and Scritch Spite Claw has it too, but comes with a little swarm of regenerating rats. Storm Vermin make up your elite rats, 4-up save, 2 attacks a model at 4s and 3s, rend 1. With Overwhelming Mass, this is 3s and 2s, 2-inch reach, which is very strong on 25mm bases. Getting all 40 attacks is realistic on the charge, and they still have the Clan Rats Retreat and Charge banner. They are definitely a hair expensive, but I think they are underrated. If you want big boy elite rat weapon platforms, pick up some Storm Fiends. Monstrous techno-rat giants with power armor and 6 choices of ranged and melee weapon loadouts, with interesting and powerful effects. 6 wounds a model, 7 with warp-laced armor for the melee ones, 4-up armor and good damage. They are slow as a downside, but Grinder Fist let them deep strike, so pretty good. For Pestilence, Plague Priest on Plague Furnace are excellent. Then you have a circus tent filled with unbalanced all-or-nothing specialists that can fill almost any role or job you might want. Think Cities of Sigmar, except cheaper, often much better, but riskier. Plague Monks are your cheap glass cannons of choice with lots of attacks on small bases, and they blow up when they die. Gutter Runners have Ambush, Warp Grinder weapon teams give any of your non-monster War Machine units. Deep Strike, Warp Fire Thrower weapon team is a 70-point unit that has maybe the strongest Horde Breaker effect in the game. Roll 2 dice per model within 8, and each 4-up is a mortal wound, which statistically kills every 1 wound model in range, whether there's 5 enemies or 60. It's just 2 rats for 70 points. So they do die to everything, and are short range and getting them in position is a tall order. But for 70 points, you aren't pushing many chips up to try and win the pot. Night Runners make good alpha blockers with their pre-game move. Hellpit Abomination is a Glass Cannon Ren 3 monster, though not being a hero, no flying, and a fast wound chart means you'll really have to get his hits in early. You also have the awesome looking Doom Wheel, but actually you don't. Sorry to say, it just doesn't do anything. This thing's terrible. Random movement, low damage, super fragile, short range, abilities that do nothing, and a startlingly high chance of blowing itself up even though it's not very good. This thing should be so fun, but its rules are worse than just underpowered, they're boring. Your endless spells are Bell of Doom, which gives you yet another way to ignore Battle Shock, though any list is already going to have at least 2 other ways at this point, even by accident. Vermintide can do a few mortal wounds, but it's probably just as useful for simply putting in the way. Warp Lightning Vortex used to be one of the most oppressive endless spells in AOS, but then its range was nerfed by half to 13 inches, so it's rarely taken. Not quite strong enough / too expensive for competitive play, but so toxic to play against that it doesn't have a home in casual lists either. So overall, Skaven has a lot of great looking models, good diversity, and a force that looks like a proper army, with excellent opportunities to customize what you're trying to do. No spam the only good thing you have here. It's a true Neapolitan, although you can spam if you want to. You have the carry units to do so. Part 3 Playstyle. Skaven is Ichiro's Suzuki mech warrior with an entourage. A swarm of disposable bodies protects a suite of heroes and specialty units carefully chosen to be amazing at every job, plus monster artillery weapons platforms ready to rain down whatever medicine you need to cure the table of the enemy. You'll rarely be striking first, but mutually assured destruction is not for deterrence but the goal. Whatever surviving rat remnants are left after the carnage can scurry over to the cratered landscape and scoop up some points. Your Legion's abilities start with, appropriately, lead from the back and scurry away, which makes Lookout Sir's -1 to hit also apply to melee as well, and lets heroes you activate in combat make a retreat move instead of attack if you want, which can really give your opponent heartburn after they charge, having to essentially pick a bad first activation in order to kill some 140-point Grey Seer before he runs away, letting you pile in some massive Storm Fiends or something at full strength. Be sure to remind your opponent about this one before a critical hero surprise yeets out of combat. Nobody wants to win with gotcha moments. It's a puzzle for your opponent to solve, not an exercise in angle shooting. You also have overwhelming mass and strength in numbers, which gives you +2 to bravery instead of +1 per 10 models in a unit, and +1 to hit and wound on units of 30 or more. You also have a bunch of clan abilities, and this carries with it a bit of keyword soup, but it's not red tape like in Gloomspite, it's just a bunch of cool abilities and power pairs to have fun with if you happen to have certain heroes. Master Clan heroes that spend command points get refunded on a 5-up. You pick a Molder monster for each Molder hero to get D3 extra wounds and reroll 1s to hit with. You pick 1 enemy hero per Eshin hero you have, that all your Eshin units can reroll wounds against. Your non-general Claw Lords all get command traits, though they have to be different ones and they're all trash. If any of your Pestilence heroes roll a 6 to pray, you manifest one of the 5 powerful Great Plague effects. And finally, if you have any Scryer heroes, you get D3 + 3 Warpstone Sparks that you can supercharge your spells, hero melee, or shooting with, although they slightly blow up when you do. It's really just a minor explosion. These are great. For command traits, you have a list to pick for each clan, and you actually get to use these since you don't need a named character as the general like some armies do, and you don't have greedy sub-factions that are forcing your choice for you like some armies do. There's a lot of overlap. Every clan has a 4-up shrug wound transfer to a nearby unit, which honestly seems to be one of the better choices, besides Scryer's 6 shooting buffs, Pestilence prayer rerolling, and some others. For artifacts, you have excellent choices for heroes of the clans, but your battalions are really not so hot, except for maybe the Pestilence one or the expensive Scryer one, so you're typically only going to get 1 artifact. You do get some great choices, like 5-up Shrug, once a game +1 attacks buff, AoE Battle Shock immunity if you somehow don't have that yet, +1 to hit rolls, extra Warpstone Sparks, etc. For spell lores, your Grey Seers put all their cunning ingenuity to work here to deliver some real game changers. Skitter Leap gives you a hero-only teleport on a 6, but it doesn't have to be the caster. Warp Gale is a 26-inch range D3 Mortal Wounds spell that also turns off flying and halves runs and charges. Super strong, but casts on an 8. Finally, Death Frenzy lets you pile in an attack when killed on a 7, also super strong, especially with such disposable units. Scryer only has 3 spells in their lore, but really they only have 1. Luckily, it's amazing. and it's more warp power that I talked about earlier. You also have 3 gnaw holes, like I also mentioned earlier, that let you teleport between them with no rolling. Plus they count as arcane for some nice +1 to cast coverage for your wizards, even if it is near board edges. A common minigame you'll find on the table against savvy opponents is them trying to zone out your teleport locations and you trying to clear the way, or putting them on purpose in a place your opponent otherwise doesn't really want to put his guys for a bit of a catch-22. So what does this all mean? Well, it's very fitting for Skaven. You need a cunning plan for deployment and your first few steps, some mind games with gnaw holes and where you could teleport or reposition to, and to surround your leaders and glass cannon specialist units with completely expendable bodies that will be sacrificed on the initial assault, followed by dangerously turbocharged explosive offense of all sorts. Mortal wounds, high rend, high volume of attacks, whatever. Their stuff will die, your stuff will die, and if the Great Horned Rat wills it, your last few surviving units can scurry over and get the cheese. However, like with Cities of Sigmar, you can do anything in a Skaven army, but you can't fit everything into the same list. Part 4, Stats. Offense A+. You have some quality delivery systems in Skitter Leap, Gnawhole Teleports, Bubble Wrapped Escorts, and of course Deep Strike, though they all come with counterplay and are fallible. Part of the reason for this A+ is not only that many of your threats are ranged and well costed, and great value and deliver well, but also you have dealer's choice for whichever exact damage type your opponent specifically lays awake at night fearing. Pure mortal wounds with 2 warp lightning cannons, high rend with mortal wound procs from Jezzails, buckets of dice rerolling everything from acolytes, more buckets of dice with plague monks or even storm vermin. Coupled with piling in to attack before you die means it's even more likely your opponent can't rob you of potential damage. It's scary. Your delivery can be a bit awkward sometimes, and most of your stuff slightly explodes when used, and which exact damage type you chose is kind of a rock, paper, scissors depending on what the opponent's defenses are, so this isn't quite S tier or anything. But when you choose scissors to their paper, it can really feel like S tier. Defense C+. Skaven defense is ablative. Clan Rats R tier list as Crumple Zones R tier dodge stratus. It's possible to buff up your defenses a little and hinder your opponent with slows and debuffs, plus you ignore battle shock in several ways. But 1 wound rats are largely made to die, and they will. It's just the plan is to turn around after that hit and blow them out of the water with crazy firepower. Fully half of your units are unbalanced hyperglass cannons, which is, truth be told, exactly how you want your War Scrolls designed. If their job is offense, why waste points on a 4-up save when you could be a 6-up save and cheaper? Stocks. Some of your guys are moderately durable, though elite enough to end up middle of the road at best anyway, like Storm Fiends or Vermin Lords. And you do have a nigh immortal Warp Seer, though he's mostly a utility piece with low damage and doesn't fly, so you can't really leverage that invulnerability into some melee powerhouse monster. He's just hard to kill. Positioning B. Your basic rats are move 6, which can feel slow, but at least you aren't dwarf or stormcast slow, and +2 to run makes early positioning easier. Skitter Leap is nice, and Deep Strike on Storm Fiends or any non-monster war machine with Warp Grinder weapon teams is a very welcome addition, though random. You have a lot of great shooting, which helps your power projection. Gnaw holes are nice, but I'd consider them more anti-opponent positioning than straight up teleport, unless your opponent just decides not to zone you out, or can't, in which case happy birthday. Mechanics A. Tons of cool clan keyword abilities, amazing buffs, and silver bullets everywhere. You need a solid game plan, but you force your opponent to need a strong counter plan, and that's like our definition of good mechanics. They have to zone out your gnaw holes, bubble wrap against your deep strike, but also deal with your bubble wrap. You have good power projection and ranged, pile in and fight after you die, plenty of good wizards, good amount of bodies. You have about as many options as you could possibly hope for in an army, without having actual everything. Part 5, Notes and Target Audience. List building wise, since you have access to great units for almost every job, this army is a checklist. Put the stuff you like in the slots they go, plenty of room for themes and customization. This army works best as a good stuff collaboration of clans, headed by a cunning master clan general that's tricking the rest of them into working for him. While you can keep it entirely to one clan to unlock some better battle line, almost none of the clans are robust enough to support a proper army list without losing more than they gain. Your models are interesting, and at times completely awesome looking. And you are one of the few armies that can really play in every phase. While the majority of their range is plastic, a few of your kits are old, being fine cast or in 1 or 2 cases even metal, which can be hard to deal with for new hobbyists. But those units aren't exactly necessary. Also, you have to paint a lot of rats. Sometimes your plans will unwind, sometimes you picked high rend and you're fighting Night Haunt and you should have went with Mortal Wounds instead. And sometimes your opponent drops from the sky, smashes into your stuff, then double turns you with the dancing coffin meme playing on his phone. But this is an army for an enterprising rat that only 2 minutes before the battle began killed his commanding officer, look at me, I'm the captain now, and starts firing torpedoes in every direction. But not random directions. There is a method to this madness. Audible footnote. If the aesthetics aren't for you, but you like the playstyle of teleporting Silver Bullet Gunhouse surrounded by good chaff, consider Cities of Sigmar, Tzeentch, or even Beasts of Chaos.